There's a saying in almost every single gacha game that you hear any of the community says, DPSs generally perform worse than supports in general, so they are not the ones that you want to hang on to if you are thinking about like power creep, new characters come out and whatnot. Is this true, and how does it apply to Zenless Zone Zero? And I want to just explain on that first as we dive into this discussion on power creep. Now, 4 inevitable things definitely will happen. You cannot disagree with any of this. I guess if you can, kudos to you, man. But first thing is that we will always get new characters in a gacha game. It's how the model works. They want to sell us new units. More units appear means that there are wider things to choose from. You have more DPS coming into the game. You have more supports coming into the game. Many new characters, many new styles coming into the game. The question is which places gets crowded fastest, which we will talk about that in a little bit, of course. But second undeniable truth in any gacha game, especially in Zenless Zone Zero, we'll get harder enemies. The monsters right now that we face are super easy, super plain vanilla. They don't even have like damage, reflect, shielding, invulnerability modes, the iframe and whatever not. They are relatively simple, relatively straightforward right now. We are definitely bound to get harder enemies coming up in future when either deal a lot of damage or have a lot of movement, iframes to resist a lot of our current characters in the game. So next one is new game modes. Now Zenless Zone Zero, since like the betas have introduced many different new game modes, and we likely will have more in future. In the sister games like Honkai Star Rail and stuff, characters that were not matter in the past because the kind of like Shi defense game mode didn't really suit them, as new game modes came about, their value started increasing over time. So this is something that we need to take into account since Hoyoverse games generally follow a similar pattern, and these 3 are the main ones. But out of all the 4 things that I think definitely will happen, the 4th one is the most interesting to discuss, which is new styles will be added into the game. Not only do you have to add in new characters, they must kind of like synergize with some kind of stylistic presence that the game is trying to do, which is what I want to touch on next, and how the game, in my opinion, will change from here, which directly affects power creep and how it's going to evolve as we dive more into it. So first things first, new styles. How will the game change? This one is super easy to understand. The first one, elemental broadening. Most of you will know gacha games will want to introduce like new elements. So for example, you have like over here you have corruption DPS, Aether based DPS, you have an ice based DPS like Alan, and eventually they want to like release new characters of different elements. For example, like a physical one, a fire limited character, so on and so forth until they fulfill the entire broad roster. Pretty straightforward for the first part over here. Now the second part is crowd control. So as the game goes by, they will likely put more emphasis into crowd control, and we don't really see that too early in the game because the monsters are relatively large spaced out. They are super far apart, all the small monsters. Big monsters don't really get crowd controlled very well. But crowd control indirectly will save you time. The more monsters you have, if you have a single target DPS, it will make it very difficult to clear because your clear time also takes longer. So units that have crowd control likely will be going more into this direction. Any crowd control aspect, notice how in the game they don't really have too many in the game currently that gives very, very strong crowd control, which kind of implies to me, especially in like a 3D game where you have like up, down, left, right, and diagonal even, you can think about that. I think crowd control is definitely something that's going to be super relevant in the near future too. Third, anomaly. We're already seeing a little bit of signs of this with the drip marketing of Bernice, who's a fire anomaly. We have other characters, for example, like Jane Doe, who's released as physical anomaly. We have Grace, we have now Piper. It's very clear that the game wants to run a dual style of crit and crit damage, crit rate, as well as the other angle of running a DPS, for example, like anomaly-based teams, which is very similar to like Genshin Impact's Elemental Mastery, your Honkai Star Rail's kind of weakness break teams and stuff like that. Very, very different kind of teams, which I really like. More styles, very nice, means more ways of playing the game, but it also means more expensive characters that we need to pull for our overall account, which just tells us picking the right characters that don't get power crept too early will actually help you if you're free to play go the longest way. Last but not least, of course, is faction bonuses. This is more catered towards the buff in the Shuri defense and eventually any other game modes. If they want you to play with all of the same faction, they could give faction bonus plus 20% if you have 2 characters of same faction damage bonus. If you have all 3 factions all 3 characters same faction, you get plus 30%. That is something that they are likely going to push out in future just to play the thematics of the game. I think that is something that they are going to do in future, which means that as you are pulling your characters, you want to consider which faction gives you the best broadness of your overall team, just in case something like that does happen. So these are 4 variable styles that I think the game can go into. It's very early in the direction of the game now. We are like barely 1 month and a half into the game. So this is very, very predictive in nature. We will only know in due time how accurate the thing is. But we have been doing Honkai Star Rail for over a year and plus, and so far we have been pretty accurate. So now I don't want to waste any of your time. We are just covering on the power creep concepts. Now that we understand why DPS generally will be a bit more crowded because of the way the game is going to progress, more characters come into the game, more ways of doing damage. The question is, which characters are then built to last? 4 main categories I think are very important for me to check the boxes before I list. I won't even just give you the top 3. I'll give you everything, every character that I feel fits into this bucket right now. And then towards the end, I'll give you the top 3. They must be versatile. They must be characters that are built to last in general. Has to be versatile enough to be able to scale with time, with different team compositions that you have. Generally speaking, supports, stun, defense characters will fill a more versatile role because they don't really require a certain DPS to function. They don't really require a certain style to function. They can fit into most team compositions generally. Rarity is another one. They must not have too many competition. They cannot be fighting with each other in the same space. They must do something that is unique and special to them, such that they are less chance of being power crept. The more rarer you are, the more niche you are, theoretically speaking, the harder it is for you to be power crept because you're fighting a very, very empty space, so to speak. It's just you standing in that niche corner over there. But the trick is to actually find both of these two, versatility and rarity, both in one. That's a bit more tough to find. We talked about this. Non-DPSs generally built better to last because they are always DPS characters are easier to sell, right? It's always easier to sell you a flashy, spanking new character that deals 1 million damage compared to your other character that does 800k damage. You will be more inclined to pull the DPS rather than a support that gives you 10% damage buff and let's just assume the design and everything you can't care too much for. Non-DPSs generally scale better with time, and that's the reason it applies to majority of gacha games in general because of the way the economics works in the gacha game industry. Have been playing it for 4 or 5 years now, a long time. Amplifiers, CC, debuff. Now the question of this one here, why I think this is a lot better, is any character that provides you damage amplification, debuffing in the overall kit, or some sort of crowd control helps you speed up the time essentially. Combined with being versatile, hard to come by, and a non-DPS means that you are basically adding a lot of value to any team that you're in. Even better if you have low fill time, but I can accommodate some characters with higher fill time, especially this early into the game. We don't have a super wide roster to pick from as well. Now, enough tickling, let's get into the real thing. What do I think, which characters will scale decently with time, and out of all these characters, I'll pick 3 to recommend as my top 3 as well. So let's start off with the A ranks, easier to talk about. The ones that fit into all these buckets and play well into future trends, I think only are the 3 supports right now that we have in the game, A rankers. Why do I think that? They are damage buffers, they amplify, and they are niche. And Sokaku is very, very good for ice teams, very, very strong as well. You might have a S tier, S rank character coming out in future that is the 5-star rarity of her, or the S rank equivalent. But the A rank is already not too bad, and we're already getting a lot of value out of this character so far. I think Sokaku is extremely strong. Characters like Nicole, characters like Lucy, similarly, they're all supports, they help boost damage. There is definitely going to be a day where your A ranks will have S rank counterparts, but the fact that you can delay some time pulling the S ranks later on means that you can focus on more pressing things early on while you're still getting very good value of these 3 solid A rankers. Some of you might be wondering, EOD, what about the other A rankers like Corin, like Billy, like Piper even, and for example like Anbi Demara? Why didn't you include them into the list or even band bigger? Now the main question that I have for main DPS, for example Corin, Billy, and Piper to a large extent, is these are very on-field DPS kind of style where they play into a main damage dealing role, which naturally means power creep is going to be much higher. Once we get a 5-star limited physical DPS, Corin and Billy will be very, very hard to fight up against the increased stats that they have. Piper already has Jane Doe, and from what it seems like, they likely won't like each other on the same team, and that's just a near-term problem. In the future, you will rather 5-star limited anomaly characters even for the more stats they do, the more of their overall kit compared to a Piper who does take up a little bit of time. She's very good in the early game as we talked about because it does a lot of damage, but they know that this is selling well now. Anomaly is actually like decently convincing people to pull for. That's why I don't think that she does well in a long period of time. She takes out a bit of field time too and is more main DPS. Unbeat Demara on the other hand has split scaling. So she is both like meant to be a stun and a damage dealer. If you look at her kit, she actually has a lot of stuff that increases her own damage, which I don't really like for a stun character. A stun character generally wants to help the team break the enemy as quickly as you can. So if the kit is catered towards stunning, I think that's where a stun character outperforms, which is something like what we see in a character like Ting Yi, of course. So A ranks aside, let's go on to this S rank side and then we will list our top 3 out of all of this. The first group of characters that are very easy to mention will be your S rankers. For example, like your characters like Lycan, your Koleda, as well as Ting Yi. These stun characters definitely will scale decently with time. Lycan is best in class for ice teams because of his ice rest shred that he does. Very, very strong already. It's like one of the reasons why you'll play Lycan instead of Ting Yi in an Ellen team. But all 3 of them are also decent. They have good kit that scales with impact stun, helping you decrease the enemies or daze them faster. These are all very good and they can be played into majority of teams quite well too. Even if you can't utilize the maximum of their kit because maybe Lycan requires 2 ice, Koleda 2 fire, and so on and so forth. Stun characters I think will scale well with time in general, since they can be also played with both anomaly style as well as attack style. Stunning enemies are always a little bit quite beneficial. The next one is characters like Grace. I think Grace will scale well with time also. She has very low field time. She does a lot of electric shock application as well, making her very, very flexible to fit into a lot of anomaly teams, whether you have a main DPS that takes a lot of field time, or perhaps you have other anomaly characters that don't really take too much field time. Grace can actually solo a shock application, which is very, very good, especially if you are building her for the right stats too. So I think Grace is one of the characters that will scale decently with time. And last but not least, before we go into our top 3, Rina is another character that is very, very underrated. I think Rina is something to catch an eye on, in my opinion, as the game scales a little bit more. Once you get a limited electric DPS, likely Rina is going to start to come into the game a little bit more. Right now, we don't have a limited attack DPS, limited anomaly DPS, so Rina is kind of taking the back foot, but I'll talk about it in a bit. Last but not least, top 3 picks. Now that we have come through our whole funneling process, I didn't want to start off with top 3 picks because it's just going to create a lot of angst and unhappiness without understanding the reason why certain characters are being picked. Now that you can see the direction and the angle of how the game is going to go, let's first things first start off with the A ranker. Who was the top pick in the A rank category? And I wanted to do something a bit for everyone, so like a limited, a standard, as well as an A rank. I choose all 3 of them, so not just like bias on everything is limited, right? Then free to play won't even have something to say. A rank, I think Nicole will scale the best with time out of all of them and is probably my top pick of a character that is resistant to power creep. Why do I say that is she offers one of the rare crowd controls in the game. As we talked about, the 4 styles that I think are very important. One of them is crowd control. She offers a generic debuff on the enemy of defense shredding. Her additional ability is not fantastic either, so you don't really have to run her in a dual Aether team or a Cunning Hairs team to proc her additional ability. In fact, I think Nicole is probably going to last for quite some time. Defense shredding. Some people argue that it's too short, but I find it's very, very good, especially if you can manage her rotations quite well. It's just understanding rotations with this character and getting the maximum DPS in the right window. Long field time characters like Ellen, like Zhu Yuan even to some extent, might not like Nicole's kit fully because of her short defense shred, but you can work around it to get quite good value out of her, and she likely will help out in the long run too. I like it. I like Nicole's kit a lot. Very, very strong. But S rank. Top 3 S ranks picks right now in the game of version 1.0 or 1.1 as of time recording. My standard top pick will probably be Rina. Now, why Rina? Some of you might be wondering, why not like other characters like Grace, Lycan and stuff like that? I think Rina offers a very unique kit where she offers one, shock duration extension, which means she can play into anomaly based teams or even electric main DPS teams. She offers a universal pen ratio increase, which helps you penetrate enemies' defenses. Why is pen ratio good? Is pen ratio plays both into crit teams as well as anomaly teams. So Rina is a specialist at playing into any style you're looking for in future. As long as you have some sort of shock in it, she's likely going to be best in slot. She has pen ratio, she has a lot of mobility, a lot of range, helping you get around corner monsters and stuff like that. Takes up decent amount of field time, but she gives a lot of value as well. She also increases like damage or electric damage of your team also. Yeah, I think if the enemy is shocked and stuff like that. So very, very strong. Now it's very, very underrated, but it's understandably why she's underrated. The only other character she performs very, very well with currently is probably a character like Grace. You could say like Anton, Anbi to some extent, but they don't get the maximum value out of Rina as a limited DPS will. And right now we have so little anomaly characters that running Grace and Rina is just a little bit awkward, and it's also rare that most people have these two characters on the same account right now this early on. So as the game progresses, you will see Rina's value, and I'll probably make a separate video on this character shortly. I think a character that will improve with time, scale with time, resistant to power creep, Rina is one of them, and we will see that clearly once we have an electric main DPS coming out. Last but not least, this is my top pick, in fact, for the whole entire Zenless Zone 0, and it's a limited S rank. I didn't want to put all limited, and if you appreciate the content so far, you like the way we present, I'm trying to share with you as logical as I can. Do like and subscribe, and leave me a comment as well what you hope to see and who do you think are your top 3 picks. And before I pull the option, I'll let you just give a guess, just mentally, just take a note. Who do you think is the top pick? And 3, 2, 1, my top pick of Zenless Zone 0 right now at 1.1. Even after looking at some of the future characters, I'll talk about it in a bit, but it's going to be Ting Yi. I think without a doubt, Ting Yi is one of the most versatile characters in the game. She can be paired with any attack DPS, regardless of their element. She does very, very good amounts of stun. She increases stun damage multiplier on the enemy, which is a unique trait, which practically is like a damage amplification. So she's like a pseudo support already, because when the enemy is stunned, that 150% gauge can become like 230% damage increase. That is pretty much damage amplification right there. No other stun character can do that. She's so flexible, fits into so many different teams, and very, very versatile. I really like this character a lot. The only downside that she has is right now she takes up a little bit more field time than I would have liked, but most of the other stun characters currently also takes up decent amount of field time. And of course, right now in the next few, like 3 to 4 months, 5 months, we might not have another stun character coming out. And if you are forced to play with the other characters on this list versus having Ting Yi in your account, it's going to be worlds apart. I think players who do not have Lycan and Ellen, if you do not have one side Lycan and Ellen, Ting Yi probably will be my very good recommendation for you to pick up right now. Just base copy. If you want to pull more, you can check out our other video where we talk more about her. But that's not all for this video, of course. I want to share with you 2 wildcards in this overall thing. There are 2 things I do not know, and 2 things that are very significant wrench in my estimations. And I'm very transparent with you guys, right? I'll tell you what I don't know. I'm not afraid to say that I don't know everything, because no one knows everything. It's all just a discussion here, and we are just sharing with each other as friends. First variable, Bernice. Is it Bernice? No, Caesar. Caesar is a defense physical character, and right now, I'll be really honest with you, I have no idea how they're going to fit defense into the meta. But given that they have a character like Caesar introducing to the game, a physical defense character, limited also, they are not going to jeopardize their sales, and something about defense characters might come into future. Maybe they're going to have a new game mode that you take shit tons of damage and you need to have a certain amount of life at the end of it. Maybe defense characters will become very relevant, but right now at this stage, I have no insider information, no unofficial leaks and stuff, so this I do not know. Caesar is a wildcard in my plans, and for those reasons, I have no idea as of now, and I'm very honest with you. This is a character that can either be very strong or very weak. No idea right now. The second variable is a very popular character like Miyabi. Not to say that she is going to be a resistant to Powercreep and she's like the one that you should pull for, but more importantly, because of her popularity and because of when she might be released, and if you want to see our predictions on that, we actually have a predictions video on the channel, but she affects every other character in the game because of her popularity. Right now, as of time of recording, the last information that we had of Miyabi was way back in CBT1 when I first played Miyabi. You can see like some clips on the channel or on our main channel or something. She was an ice seemingly attack character. But as the time goes by, a lot of people are wondering, is Hoiver's going to really power creep a character like Ellen so quickly? It's going to just leave a very sour taste in players' mouths. So the element and the typing, she could be, for all you know, fire, she could be electric, she could be aether, attack, anomaly, main DPS. No one really knows right now. But the chance of her being ice attack does seem like a bit of a poor decision to be made, especially if you're a company that is trying to have your players stay the long run in the game. You don't want like power creep the first character that they put within like 3 months, right? I won't feel happy about that. You guys that put Ellen might not feel too happy about that. But of course, we already knew that it might happen some point of time as well. So I think Miyabi is the first variable and a wrench in the plans. If she is of whatever faction, because of her popularity, the particular factions that work well with her, the elements that work well with her likely will outperform as well. This is something that I do not know, and it's something that is worthy to mention. Other characters, not that important, but this is a character that we know is already very popular, tried and tested. Some of you are watching this, how popular is Miyabi even? In CBT1, when she was released, no one played with any other characters in the game and only played Miyabi. That's what people were saying. That's why they took her off for CBT 2 and 3, never introducing her again. Everyone was just playing her, just super strong back then. And yeah, those are my honest thoughts and sharing you both sides of the story. And if you appreciate such content, we'll be doing another review of this in 6 months' time. And I'll also be rating myself on my recommendations or my top 3 picks. If you really like this video, you find this style helpful, leave a like, comment, and share with any of your friends who play Zenless 02 that you want to help them save a little bit of resources as well. Thank you guys so much for watching. See you next video.